In this sublesson, we are going to see how to create ACI VMM domains. The VMM domains are used to connect external hypervisors to the ACI fabric. The Virtual Machine Manager or VMM domains provide hypervisors programmable and automated access to scalable virtualized data center infrastructure. The Cisco ACI infrastructure supports VMM integration for multiple hypervisors from different vendors. We can connect hypervisors such as Kubernetes or OpenShift, OpenStack, a Red Hat virtualization, VMware virtual distribution switches, or even the VMware hypervisors. The VMM domains allow us to configure connectivity profiles that enable VM controllers to connect to ACI fabric. There are different components of VMM domain: the VMM domain profile, EPG association, attachable entity profile, and VLAN pool association. Let's look at the VMM policy model. The VMM policy model, or at the top of the VMM policy model, we have the VMM domain profile. The VMM domain profile has the groups of VM controllers with similar networking policy requirements. For example, the VM controllers can share VLAN pools and application endpoint groups, or EPGs. The APIC communicates with the controller to publish network configuration, such as port groups, that are then applied to the virtual workloads. The VMM domain profile includes some of the essential components, such as credential and controller. Credential associates a valid VM controller user credentials with an APIC VMM domain. The controller specifies how to connect to a VM controller that is part of the policy enforcement domain. For example, the controller specifies the connection to a VMware vCenter that is part of the VMM domain. It's important to note that a single VMM domain can contain multiple instances of VM controllers, but they must be from the same vendor. For example, from VMware or from Microsoft, based on the controller or hypervisor that you're connecting to. The EPG association can also be done with the VMM policy model. EPG association allows endpoint groups regulate connectivity and visibility among the endpoints within the scope of the VMM domain policy. The VMM domain EPGs behave in a way that the APIC pushes these EPGs as port groups into the VM controller, and an EPG can span multiple VMM domains, and a VMM domain can contain multiple EPGs. You can then perform AEP association or attachable entity profile association with the VMM domain profile. The AEP association associates a VMM domain with the physical network infrastructure. And AEP is a network interface template that enables deploying VM controller policies on a large set of leaf switch ports. And AEP specifies which switches and ports are available and how they are configured. And finally, the VMM domain profile can also perform the VLAN pool association. A VLAN pool specifies the VLAN IDs or the ranges for the VLAN encapsulation that the VM domain can consume. Let's now briefly see how we can use the APIC controller to configure the VLAN pools and also the VMM domain. We move back to the ACI APIC controller. Under Fabric, we go under Pool, and under the pools, we define a VLAN pool. So under the VLAN pool, we'll say VMM pool, and we can define the range of, say, VLAN 200 to 299, and it will be external on the wire encapsulation, and OK, and submit. Once we have defined the VMM pool, we are then going to move to the Virtual Networking tab. Under the Virtual Networking tab, we have an option for VMM domains. Under the VMM domains, we have various options such as Microsoft, OpenStack, Red Hat, and VMware. If you want to create VMM domains for one of these hypervisors or vendors, right-click on that vendor name and say Create vCenter domain or Create SC VMM domain. So we go under the VMware and say Create vCenter domain. In order to create a vCenter domain, remember that you need to have access to a vCenter from your ACI fabric. So let's create a vCenter DOM, and we'll be selecting the virtual switch as VMware vSphere distributed switch. For an AAP, you can use an existing one or create a new one from here. Let's use an existing one, and then we have, let's say, enable VM folder data retrieval and put it in the read-write mode in order so that you can make changes from your ACI fabric as well. Once you're done with this, the next step you need to do is select the VLAN pool. Remember, we created a VLAN pool, VMM pool. Let's select the VMM pool. Security domains, if you have any security policies that you need to attach, you can create a security domain or attach in a security domain. Else you can move to the vCenter credentials. Here, you need to enter the vCenter credentials for accessing the vCenter server. So you can say vCenter credential and say whatever or specify the username and password, whatever you have set for your vCenter server. Once you're done, click OK and then submit. If you have your vCenter domain connected, so now that you have created your vCenter domain, you now need to connect to the controller or add a controller to the vCenter domain. So you click on controllers under the vCenter domain that you created and say create vCenter controller. And under the controller, you specify the name of the controller, controller1, VMware controller1, and specify the IP address, let's say 31.32, and I specify the DVS version if I know it's most likely 6.5, and data center you can say DC1, and stats collection if you want to enable it, enable. Management EPG, if you want to create a management EPG under the tenant management, you can create one, else you can leave it empty. And finally, select the credentials. You can select the credentials, the one that you created earlier, or you can create a new VMM credential settings from here. So we can select the vCenter credentials from here and say submit. Once you have created or added the controller, you should start seeing the hypervisors getting populated under the VMware controller one that you created. Right now, we do not have any hypervisors attached. That's why we are not seeing any information getting populated. But this should take care of adding your controller to the VMM domain. Similarly, you can add VMM domains for other vendors such as OpenStack or Microsoft or Red Hat.